No, actually.
Ah, yes.
Dad, I'll let you reformat this.
You're going to be in the
It's,
sun.
it reformatted itself already.
No, I mean,
No, he's frame it.
in
Frame.
case
He
you
meant
wanted to
frame it.
reframe it. Okay, so we'll start over. This is November 6th, 2012. I'm here at Grandpa.
Are you recording yet?
This is recording.
Okay.
Can you plug it into the plug or?
The battery's silent. Grandpa Leg's house. We're in Stockton, California. I'm here with Grandma Dot and Grandpa Bill. Grandpa Bill, I'll ask you to just repeat a little bit about. So you were born.
Born in Manchester, Tennessee.
Okay.
December 7, 1921. And we went from there to Detroit, Michigan,
And
because half of Tennessee was going to Detroit, Michigan, because Henry Ford was paying good money, like $5 a week or something, for workers to do his bidding.
And at this point, you were still with your parents. At this point,
Actually, I think I was with Grandma and Grandpa Ballard at that point.
Do one thing.
Sure.
Play that back and let's make sure this is recording.
Okay.
Let's just make sure that we don't do it.
Okay, so at this point, when you moved to Detroit, you were with your grandpa and Grandma Ballard, which were your mom's parents?
Right.
Okay. And you were saying before that you were very grateful that they sort of stepped
They
up.
were a great pair of parents. They took care of me, and they also took care of some of my other cousins. Lived in Detroit for 6 years, from the time I was 4 until I was 10. I think the math adds up there. And when I was 10 in 1929, or about 10, they had the Great Crash, and the Tennessee crowd had to head back home. We moved back to
Quick, for those of you watching the Great Crash, he means the Great Depression.
the Great Depression, that's true. The 1929 job where they closed banks and did all kinds of such things. Not that I had any money in a bank at that time. We went back, we first moved to Madison, Tennessee for a short period of time, and then moved on into Nashville, at which time I had started going to school in the 5th grade there.
You weren't going to school before that?
I had been in school in Michigan from the time I was 5 until I was 10.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in the 5th grade in Madison and in Nashville. And then some of the important stuff of my life, they transferred me to a little school called Ross School, at which point I was in the 6th grade, and I was elected as the president of a science club.
Okay.
The science club consisted of about 4 kids that had been selected by the school teacher. One of them was chosen to be the secretary of the science club. She's sitting next to me now.
You met in 6th grade?
I didn't realize at that time that she had already set her hat for me. The boys and the girls were separated in the play yard at the time for recess.
Wow.
And she stood on her side and looked over at the fence at me. But I didn't realize it at that time, but my goose was already cooked. Is that right?
That is right. Every bit of it. I got up high enough that I could look over the fence, and I saw this good-looking boy, and I thought, wow. And it's been like that ever since.
And you were already there?
We were, what, about 10 years old?
We were what?
Well, because you had moved from Detroit to Tennessee.
To Nashville.
So that's where you were born?
No, no.
You talking to me
Yes,
now?
where were you born?
Okay, honey, I was born in Guthrie, Kentucky, and
Okay.
I will tell you why.
Okay.
It was about 3 miles from where my grandmother lived in Tennessee,
Okay.
and my daddy had met my mother down the road from where she lived on a farm there in Tennessee, and he had gotten a job in Guthrie, which, as I said, was 3 miles away. And he and my mother started dating, and when they got married, they went to where he had his job, which was in Kentucky.
Okay.
So we lived there, I think I was only about 2 months old when they moved back to Tennessee. And my dad, at that time, I think, had gotten a job in what was called Clarksville, Tennessee.
Mhm.
So
What was his job?
Pardon?
What was his job?
He was,
What was that first job?
I think he was manager of a department store.
Okay.
And so then he was transferred to Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And wait, I got to go back just a little bit though.
Please.
At first, he was transferred to Knoxville, Tennessee,
Okay.
and I went to kindergarten in Knoxville.
Okay.
But then, not for very long, we moved to Nashville, and that was my home from then on.
Okay.
That's where I met my husband here. And I guess we lived in pretty close neighborhood. We went to the same school. And when we were high school kids, we were dating
What was your first date?
with him.
Yes. Yes, I mean with him.
You know, that's kind of funny because
That's fuzzy.
both of us had dated, you know, like high school kids do, other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't remember
I
the
don't
first
either.
date.
I don't either. I probably walked you home from some school function or something.
Isn't that strange? But I do remember going to his house and meeting his family
Okay.
before we graduated. He had a very nice family. I still think about how good they were. I loved them the minute I saw them.
Mm-hmm.
They were very good to me. He had a wonderful mother. And so, we just kind of grew up together.
I see. So you were friends
Oh, yeah.
well before you
Oh,
were
yes.
an item.
Except I never grew up.
And,
I will endorse that.
and we were in that club together, weren't we?
The science club?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was very good school,
Mm-hmm.
very nice school.
Now, did you have high school dances? Was that... Did
We
they have
did.
dances?
I had 2 left feet.
We did have dances, and he did not dance.
So you didn't go?
I don't think he wanted to, so
Mhm.
I went with other people
I
sometimes.
see. So you
And,
never
and
went to
both
a
of us dated other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's until we get, I guess we were at least about 19 before we ever got,
Yeah, I got
Together.
anywhere near serious.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when I think I was 19, when you got your Marine Corps,
You were 19, I was 20
yeah.
when I went into the service.
And that was it,
Mhm.
We didn't date anybody else after that.
Okay.
We got-
Especially me.
we got engaged.
The South Sea Island beauties did not necessarily.
Measure up. Grandma, let me ask you, what were some of your hobbies when you were a kid?
Are you talking to me now?
Yeah. What did you do for fun?
For fun, I read. I
Okay.
was a complete book person
Can you remember a book you
up
read?
until about 2 years ago.
Okay.
Oh, you
That was.
were wrapped up in the movies so deep that
I loved to go to movies. I did.
What was the movie?
All kinds of movies. I loved them all, and we had good movie theaters in Nashville.
Hmm.
So we had a good time going to the movies. And I loved to walk, so I would go visit my friends and walk. I
Mhm.
always liked to walk, and I did that until about 2 years ago.
you did that until this afternoon.
Yeah, that's true.
We walked about a mile this
little bit.
afternoon.
And then when I graduated from high school,
Hmm.
we did not, at that time, it was a depression. Nobody hardly could go to college because they couldn't afford it. So we all had to hunt jobs. And I loved office work. And when I was in high school, I worked in the office. And so I knew what was going on in an office, and I loved that kind of work. So I got a job working in an office,
Mhm.
which I worked there for 5 years. And I started out being I guess you might call it a bookkeeper,
Okay.
because that's,
Order writer.
and I wrote, what do you call those things? My memory's getting bad. Anyway,
Invoice?
then about a year before I left that place, my secretary, who was above me, moved away, and they put me in that position. Well, that was a very high position.
Okay.
So I stayed there for about a year, and then that was when we decided to come to California, I guess.
Yep.
Oh, so you were doing some of that while Grandpa was in the Marines,
Oh, yes.
and then
Whole
when he
time.
came
Whole
home,
time. Yes.
you continued to do it, and
Yes.
you did not have Dad yet. You
No,
didn't
no.
have any kids at this point.
No.
Oh, no.
When we came to California, that was in 1950, wasn't it? No,
No,
48.
46.
Well, anyway, I think we were here a couple of years before we had your dad.
Yeah.
So why the move?
As a matter of fact, we were here a couple of years before Aunt Suze was born. She was our first child
Yes,
in
I guess
1948.
We had been here about 4 years then, I guess.
And Butch came in 50 and Ween came in 54.
So why did you move from Tennessee?
I just decided that the West Coast was a heck of a lot better place to make a living.
Okay.
And my mother was here, my stepfather, he was running a business,
Okay.
contract business. And we came out here. Well, I kind of feel that he wanted to get me and Dot out of the house, which I wouldn't blame anyone for wanting to get a young married couple out of the house. And we were living in Hayward at the time, where my folks were. And he had a job building Louis Market here in Stockton. Brought me up here and put me to work on that job. And while he had me here, he said, why don't you go over to the electricians union and see if you can get on over there? Which I did. I went over, put in an application, and I think they put me to work almost immediately at Collins Electric Company. And me and Mom moved to Stockton.
I've got to tell you one thing about that. We couldn't find an apartment at first because at that time it was very, very hard. All the people from the war were here looking for places.
Okay.
So we lived in a tourist place over on Charter Way.
Tourist place?
Tourist. And
Well, it's what they used to call a tourist cabin.
and
You
it-
had it's a motel type operation.
I guess I should have said motel. And
Only the one that we lived in had the bathroom outside.
outside. So for newlyweds, you know, that was
Inconvenient, let's say.
inconvenient. And then the people started building houses and apartments in different places, and we moved to an apartment. We were the first ones in this apartment
Mm-hmm.
over on Charter Way.
Yeah.
And then that's when I got pregnant with Susie, Dottie Sue.
Never did understand that.
And then we found a better apartment over in South Stockton.
Yeah, so that time it was a boy.
And then I got pregnant with your father over there,
Mm-hmm.
and we stayed there
That was 8th Street,
6th.
6th Street.
6th Street, behind the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
Yes, it was behind the fairgrounds over there. And then we stayed there for 2 years. And this subdivision had been built. And
Was being built.
was being built, I should say. And we started looking for a house instead of an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And we found this one. And we've been here now.
Since.
You're the first owners of this
We're
house?
we're the only owners, first and
Yeah.
only of
The
this.
birds were flying in and out. when
There
we
are
bought
not
it.
too many places like that.
And it was
Same owners since
It was almost
19.
outside of town when they bought it.
there were no streets on that side. There were no streets on this side.
There was a rice field
Yeah.
back there.
Rice fields and rabbits running around and snakes.
Now, when you moved
It was in
from
the country.
yeah, so you were doing office work and managerial work. When you
Yeah.
moved out here, did you work?
No, I did not because I was too shy to go downtown. I could not drive a car at that time. I did not learn to drive a car until I was pregnant, I think,
With Butch,
with
wasn't it?
Butch, with your daddy.
How old were you when you learned to drive a car? This will be very interesting to anybody who watches this.
How old was I
When you learned to drive a car.
I think I was about 28.
Okay. Did you own a car?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you drove out
He
here.
did, yeah. And I
That
did,
counts, yeah.
We know what you meant.
We know what you mean, babe.
well, I guess I was thinking about
He
that
drove it.
he always had it, you
Yeah.
know, and that's that. But I didn't learn to drive the car that we had. My neighbor where we lived taught me to drive. He
Okay.
didn't.
And so you were shy?
Oh
As-
yes, I've been shy all my life.
You've been shy your life.
Yeah.
How else would people describe you when you were a child? When you were young.
Beautiful.
So people would, how else would,
Well,
Butch,
I
go look on my chest of drawers and get the...
please, yeah.
Pictures?
had
Yeah.
a lot of high school friends.
Okay.
And I was okay with the people that I knew well, but
Mhm.
I was never a person who could make new friends easily.
Hmm.
I still am not.
So is that something that drew you to Grandpa? The fact that he could make friends easily?
When I met him, after I fell in love with him in elementary school, it was so easy for me to be with him because he was
Hold that up to the camera.
outspoken. He was very good with everybody he saw. He had a lot of friends. All I had to do was sit and enjoy myself.
Okay. Wow.
And so that's what I did.
Like Hallie.
And there,
Wow. Um, okay, so you enjoy being with him because he did all the work.
Yes, I mean it was, well, it was immediately, you know, that I just love being with him.
Yeah, sixth grade, no less.
Yeah,
Been married all our lives.
and I was very comfortable. I was not shy with him like I was with most people. And he had a wonderful family, and I enjoyed that. And yeah, it's just been a wonderful marriage.
Do you remember where you proposed?
I think it was on the telephone, wasn't it?
Oh my
You know
God.
what?
Not a text message.
I don't really remember.
No, as a matter of fact.
Do you? I don't.
Yeah, I remember. I had just come back from overseas. I was at Treasure Island down in the Bay Area when the ship pulled in, and I got off, got on the telephone and dropped enough quarters in, got her on the phone. I think that's when I proposed. And
Well,
but we get ahead of ourselves a little bit there.
yeah. I think we were engaged before you ever went to the service.
Probably
weren't we?
so.
I think we were.
Yeah.
Or thought we were anyway.
Yes.
And I think that I don't think I got my engagement ring until you came home, though.
Well, you got an engagement ring while I was in New River, North Carolina. I came home on a leave,
Yeah.
and we went and bought it. Not exactly the largest ring in the whole wide world.
I'm still wearing it, and you can see it right there.
Will you hold it here, please? Or we can move that.
It's this.
Perfect.
The one right there.
Uh-huh.
I've never had that off of my finger.
Oh my God. Even when you got pregnant, your fingers didn't swell up?
Even when I went to the hospital to have the baby, and you know they want you to take your rings off usually, I
Yes.
said no, not taking it off, and so they taped them.
Okay.
And this one was a gift
That was later.
after we moved here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so those two rings that I got, wedding band and engagement ring, have never been off of my finger ever.
Wow. So Grandma was shy. She liked reading and liked movies. Can you think of a book that you remember reading?
Gone with the Wind or something?
My memory is not.
Can't remember
good
any
as it
one that
should.
impacted you?
Everything I like to read.
Okay.
It didn't matter if it was, and even after I moved here and had my 3 kids, I wanted to read all the time. So
Okay.
that was mostly at that time a lot of magazines probably.
Mm-hmm. Did they have libraries?
Oh yes, we had
Okay.
a library right across the street from our high school.
Okay.
So that was very convenient for me. And I lived about 6 blocks from high school,
And we walked
and we walked.
very safely.
Yeah. And we had a very nice high school, very good looking.
4
And-
stories, no less. Brick.
And nice teachers, and so we had a very good growing up time. Yeah.
Grandpa, what were some of your hobbies or talents when you were young? We talked about electricity.
I'm not real sure I had any talents, but I did enjoy playing with the transformer that I got that came with my train set. After the train set broke, I'd do whatever I could with that transformer. Take wire and heat it up red hot and burn things.
When you
And-
say transformer, you're not talking about an action figure
no.
that folds from
I'm
a car
talking
to a
about-
person.
I'm talking about something that took 120 volts and got it down to where it was safe for a kid to play with it.
Okay, so you're just talking about electricity.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I remember about being in school with him is that he loved to be on the my memory is there, but my words won't come sometimes. When we would have
You're talking about the sound
the
system.
sound, you'd love to be on the sound system when we would have
I
school things on the stage.
I handled the sound equipment. And one of the other things that I did that they didn't let me do, but I did it anyway, was make sure that the lights were all on at the football field. And I'd actually climb the poles down there. They had steps on them, but I'd climb the poles and change burned out bulbs with no such thing as a safety belt or absolutely nothing. You know, you hang on with one hand and work with the other one. I think it was preparing me for the Marine Corps.
And another thing that he always liked to do is play the guitar,
Okay.
At least try.
and still does.
How old were
Liked
you when
his-
you first started playing guitar?
I think it was when we lived on 13th Street, and I was about, one of the other kids had a guitar, I didn't, but
You were about
I don't know,
12
12,
years old,
13,
about 12,
somewhere in
something
that neck of the
something
woods.
like that, yeah.
When were you singing in high school?
Was I what?
Singing?
Yes? You
When
said-
I joined the Marine Corps, I weighed 137 pounds.
Oh, singing.
Oh, singing?
Yeah, you didn't
As a
understand.
matter of fact, yeah, there's a bit of a story there too. We used to do a little bit of harmonizing, and I think it was when probably in the 11th grade. I was in the choir that we had, and this teacher had decided to use us as a part of a program at the auditorium. There were 5 of us in the group, and he says, "You guys wear your sports coats and you know, you'll look fine." Well, I didn't have a sport coat. My pride wouldn't let me borrow one, so I just didn't go to the program. And I think my love of harmony took place in the front yard on 13th Street and excuse me. And I started singing "The Old Apple Tree in the Orchard," and one of the gals from the neighborhood, a gal named Jane Hewitt, started harmonizing with me. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven right there. We'll get into the rest of the singing later on downstream, but
Okay.
Well, I'll interrupt just a minute because I also loved to sing when I was in high school.
Okay.
And I was in the choir. And we sang on stage for the kids in the auditorium a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we came to Stockton, I joined what was called, and still here, called Sweet Adelines. And I sang with a group for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. And then,
Was it singing and dancing?
no dancing.
Just singing.
Just
choir.
singing,
Okay.
yeah.
Sweet Adelines is barber shoppers for women.
ladies,
Oh.
barber shoppers.
But I got too busy with
Mhm.
the kids, and it was they met at night, and I got so I didn't care to go that much, so I dropped out. But I still liked to hear the singing.
Mhm.
About that time, I was teaching school 2 nights a week.
Yes, you.
Just for extra income?
There was an electrical apprentice class, and somebody said, "You want to start teaching the class," which I had been through.
Mm-hmm.
And I agreed to do it. I don't know why, but that's one of the things that we never did, Russell. We didn't build that kind of income into the standard of living, because if you build it into the standard of living, then you have to do it. You have to keep up with that. I didn't build it into the standard of living. The checks went into the bank, and we had the option then of I could quit if I wanted to, or I could keep going if I wanted to. And I taught that class for 4 years, teaching electrical theory, or at least very early electrical theory, because that's as far as any of the apprentices go.
Mm-hmm.
They find out a little bit about what the background is, but they find out how to do it more than the why. Anyway,
Did you play any sports?
I sat on the left end of the bench most of the time in the football
Okay.
field. I played tackle on a football team that really was spectacularly unsuccessful.
Okay. Did girls play sports?
You,
Oh yes, I never did like to play sports myself.
Okay.
But we had to take something like that in
Physical education.
Yeah.
in school.
Okay.
So I got out of it, but I don't remember how. But
Okay.
I had just go and sit down and do my schoolwork while everybody else was doing it.
Okay.
I was never athletic ever.
Mm-mm.
how athletic can you be when you weigh 100 pounds?
Well, I didn't even weigh 100 pounds.
I know that.
When we got married, I weighed 98. And I don't weigh much more than that now. I think I weigh 100.
100, 101 somewhere. You're
something like that.
you're just blowing up something awful.
I also wanted to ask, what was the most advanced technologic thing at that time?
Well, they didn't have much in the way of movie cameras. Certainly couldn't match the one that I've got today. Telephones, you had one telephone in the house usually, and it was the old stand-up type with a
Two-piece?
Yep.
Mhm.
two-piece.
Television, would that be the most?
No,
You didn't have TV.
Oh, you didn't have television?
no.
First television that I ever saw.
But you had
was
movies.
When we moved, it was when we moved to Stockton, and some.
Well, that's when they first came out.
TVs
honey.
came out in the late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah.
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 They didn't exist before that.
That's right. They didn't, but we didn't have one. But
That radio.
somebody I knew asked me to come to their house and look at it. And
Mm-hmm.
we thought that was just absolutely wonderful. Which it was back then.
Black and white.
Oh yes, definitely black and white, and
Small.
and being
Small?
About this big.
Round.
being shot live. In other words, they didn't have the recording. They put you on stage, and what they did is what you got.
Okay.
And they did have old 78 RPM records. We did have record players
Records,
back
telephones.
then.
Okay.
Lots and lots and lots of first-rate songs on radio.
Mm-hmm.
Had good radio, good programs, and the family would gather around, and you used your imagination to fill in the gaps.
So similar to how families might gather and watch a television show. You gather around
They
the
don't-
radio?
No, they don't have the family that gathers around the television now doesn't have to use their imagination.
Mm-hmm.
They have a picture there that's what you see is what you get.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have anything but voice coming out of the radio, and what she saw on the radio maybe is not what I saw on radio.
So it'd be
because-
like when I read a story to my kids.
Yeah.
Well, I must tell you this. I had to have to think about it. back then, we didn't live close to town. We lived in Nashville, we lived in a suburb. Well, when an airplane would come by, anybody that would hear an airplane, the whole neighborhood would run out to look at it. Because the airplanes weren't like they are today. You know, there weren't that many. And they had one airport, of course. They didn't have lots of them in little towns like they do today either.
Yeah, and sometimes on Sunday afternoon you'd go out to the airport just to watch the planes fly.
Just to see a plane.
Wow.
That was a trip that people would take.
So let's move to the Marine Corps. You signed up as soon as you could.
I signed up as soon as I could.
And your motivation for signing up?
The country was at war.
Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor was the catalyst, of course. The country was at war. My dad had been in the Marines, and I just kind of automatically expected when I went in the service it was going to be the Marines. You had to volunteer to get in that. There was no such thing as a draft into the Marine Corps. Draft would put you in Army and Navy and even some portions of the Air Force. Marines were taking nothing but volunteers at the time. They wanted them real dumb, which I suppose that's what we were. But yes, 2 days after Pearl Harbor, I was down at the recruiting depot and signed the necessary papers. They said, we've got so many people signing up, you'll want to wait a few days before you go. And I said, well, yeah, how about after the holidays? And they said, okay. So January 7, I got on board a train in Nashville, Tennessee, and headed off to Parris Island, South Carolina, to the Marine Recruit Depot there.
What did you do in the Marine Corps? What was your role or job?
They shipped me out of boot camp down to Dunedin, Florida, and that was an amphib tractor base where they were training. Amphibian tractors.
Okay. What are those?
The amphib tractor had the ability to haul men or material in an open cargo compartment, and it would drive off of the land out into the ocean and keep going.
On top of the ocean?
Yeah.
It wouldn't go in the water? So it would go from a land machine essentially to a boat?
Just driving into the water.
Like
Yeah.
a boat with wheels, so it could also go on land.
Okay.
It didn't have wheels. The amphib tractor had had tracks on it.
Mm-hmm.
Tread.
A rig called the Duck had wheels and a body that would serve as a boat.
Okay.
And they did the same thing that we did, only we were a little more heavy duty. And while in Dunedin, Florida, as in that amphib tractor battalion, they put me through a mechanic school, which served me quite well all my life because I did a lot of my own mechanical work. The amphib tractor group that I was with went from Dunedin, Florida to New River, North Carolina. More training there. And from New River, we went to San Diego. And from San Diego, loaded on board ship in the USS Lurleen. They took the division that I was with, the third Marine Division, and the amphib tractors was a part of that division, and took us to New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
More training, and basically I was a mechanic on the amphib tractors the whole time that I was in the Marines.
Okay, so mechanic type work on the amphib tractor.
But being a mechanic, it's still just as scary when you go into a battle, because you're just another one of the troops that they had on board that ship, like that Amtrak, to take care of it. So you were going in with the rest of the guys. Didn't do much on the first landing. 6 days later, I finally got to Bougainville. And after Bougainville, went back and went in, transferred to another division, to the 1st Division, to another amphib tractor outfit. And with that one, we went to Peleliu, and I kind of laid around out in the onboard ship for 2 or 3 hours before I went into Peleliu, which has been listed as probably one of the bloodiest damn battles going. The guy that wrote the book on Iwo Jima, I talked to him and told him that I had been in the Peleliu campaign and also the Okinawa campaign, which subsequently I got in that one, and he says, well, you guys caught the crap, and they Peleliu and Okinawa bracketed the Iwo Jima campaign. And his words, not mine, was, we got all the ink and you guys caught the crap. On the Okinawa campaign, I was part of the first wave in that one. But fortunately, there wasn't anybody on the beach to greet us. Mm-hmm. And I'll take that kind of landing almost any day.
Well, I have to tell you this, or he does actually. After we moved here, that's when he started singing barbershop style. And let him tell you how that happened, because he's still into that and loves it.
Yeah, I got a phone call from a guy that I knew, says, I think you may enjoy an outfit that I belong to, and I'd like to have you come and listen. And I said, okay, what is it? And he explained the purpose, and I said, well, I'll be glad to come and listen. I'm the world's greatest listener, but I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. I guess I've been proving it ever since.
Do you remember the first song you sang?
No, well, I think the first one was that old apple tree in the orchard. That was back on 13th Street, though, with the gal harmonizing with me. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the first one was that we did with the chapter. The director asked me what part I could sing, and I said, well, I think I may be able to falsetto a tenor. And he was very happy with that. Since that time, I've sung tenor, lead, baritone, and bass, and done all of them equally poor.
And what are some of the shows you've done? I know that I saw you do The Music Man.
Yeah, we did The Music Man. There were many shows after I got in the barbershoppers here and got a quartet going. There were many times that my quartet was hired to come and perform on another chapter show.
Okay.
And I recall one of the first shows that we did was at, I think it was over in Vallejo. And at that show, it was a small auditorium, but at that show, one of the guys from the Sacramento chapter came to me and said, hey, how would you guys like to be on a Sacramento show? Well, that didn't take much selling as far as we were concerned. And he booked us for a couple of months later And I recall that we were up in a dressing room and nobody was there helping the four of us. And I recall saying, hey, let's go down on stage and see what's going on. Well, we walked down there, their chorus was on stage, and the MC, as we walked into onto the backstage area, says, and now from Stockton, California, here's the four specs. And fortunately, we didn't even break stride. We just kept walking and walked on stage. None of this thing of standing there and getting nervous. But apparently it was a pretty successful group because we made the audience laugh. And believe me, that's a real plus. If you can get a laugh and get applause to go with it, that works. And we used that quartet everywhere from Reno to the Bay Area and from as far south as Taft and as far north as Eureka. We covered a pretty darn good sized bit of territory. And did I enjoy it? Oh yes, every minute of it. That quartet broke up, another one came along, and since that time, that was the four specs, the first one, and then the shaving mugs, and the dispensers of musical libations, and one called the Tattered Remnants because we were the leftovers from four different quartets, and I'm singing with a group now over at the mall called the Forget Me Notes.
Okay. And did you practice ever at home?
As a matter of fact, I can recall standing in there in the living room holding Jean as a little baby of about indigo size. And we're standing in front of a mirror in there, and she went to sleep while we were singing, and I said, man, we've got it made.
I can remember being in the kitchen and the quartet was in the dining room there practicing. This room wasn't here yet, so it was, you know, in there. But yeah, the quartet came over here and practiced.
This room we added later on.
Oh.
And your Aunt Sue's said, yeah, you wait till I get married and then you add a family room.
That's right. Are there any, Grandma Dot, are there any really fond memories from when your kids were young?
They're all fond memories, I think, but I just
Picking out a single one is
specifically,
difficult.
yeah, that is difficult.
Did you guys ever go on a family trip?
We went back home to Nashville a couple of times.
Car ride with
In
young
a car,
kids?
yeah.
I don't remember too many trips.
Not sure that it was real fond.
With no DVD players?
Yeah, and no air conditioning.
No air conditioning, no. Coming back at one time, coming back across the desert down south here, I would stick my hand up and one of the kids would stick a glass of ice water in it. I'd turn it up and let half of it flow over me and the other half down me.
Yeah.
Because, man, that was hot. That was some interesting times.
Went to Disneyland a few times.
As a matter of fact, yeah, Butch won a trip to Disneyland. Actually, it was for two people to fly to Disneyland, and I talked to them a little bit about that, and they said, well, we'll just give you the money and you can get there the way you want, any way you want to.
Mm-hmm. How'd you win it? How did he win it?
How did he win?
Spinning top, is it?
Spinning the top, yeah.
Dunkin' Tops. I was a Northern California Duncan spin top champion. And then I went to Disneyland and they had the Nationals.
Yeah. And they had a bunch of champions. Oh boy, were those kids good. And Butch saw early on that he wasn't going to win that thing. So he went to the guys running it and asked them if he could drop out. And they agreed. So he spent the next 3 days roving Disneyland while the rest of the kids were in the damn contest. And they didn't have hardly any time to see Disneyland. But Butch got plenty of time to see it because I ain't going to win this thing anyway. Why don't I drop out of it now? And that was a pretty smart move.
I have to interfere just a minute because he left out something that I thought was good for him too. He was playing the guitar and he met a man who played a
mandolin,
and they sang and played together for quite a while.
Sometime, yeah, he was one of the guys that was in a quartet with me. And yeah, we had a lot of fun with that.
Pick and peck.
Yeah.
And he had always liked to be on stage and still does and has been very good at it. The showman.
Mm-hmm.
And as I see your family, I think it was inherited.
Yeah, my siblings.
It's showbiz family for sure.
Yeah.
So that's good for you. Everybody enjoys your family very much.
Did you get all the relatives already?
No, I wanted to ask a little bit about family tree.
Family tree
And
growing up?
I'd like you to go back on either side as far as you're willing to. So you can start, Grandpa, with the Ballards, and then
Start as far back as
can
you
you
can
think
remember.
can you think past them?
Well, I can't.
Well,
I have no way to think past them,
Okay.
other than the fact that I sat at the table before the room was built here. My grandfather was out here. He'd come on a visit.
What were their names,
The Ballard.
or what were the first and
Oh, William Allen Ballard
then her name?
and Meddy Jane Ballard.
Did she have a
No.
maiden name?
you know, what was her
Her
name?
maiden name was Moss, M-O-S-S.
And they were first cousins. Can you believe that?
I can. That's
Well,
it's
You know somebody like that?
no, not now.
They lived in central Tennessee, way back in the bush. And my grandfather's, I think it was his grandfather, had come over the hill from Virginia, leading a mule with his wife on it, and he had a sock full of corn. Came over into Tennessee, homesteaded a bunch of land, plowed and planted his corn, and they say my grandfather, who I call old folks, he said that for years that was known as Ballard's corn there in central Tennessee. It was used for seed corn all over the place there.
And then how about your dad's parents?
My dad's parents, his father and stepmother lived in Manchester, where I was born. That's where he joined the Marine Corps. That's where Uncle Charlie joined the Navy. And my grandpa Legg came from, I think it was Henpeck, Ohio. And I've got a lot of I got a lot of notes and paper on this. It hasn't been pulled together. But he and my grandmother moved there when my dad was, I think, 6 or 7 years old. And Uncle Charlie was 5. And they bought a 120-acre farm. 120 acres was a farm back there. It'd be a ranch out here, but not where we come from. And he raised tobacco and corn and cattle. Had a lovely farm back in that end of the world. And some of that can be documented because I've got pictures of the farm, and I've got pictures of him on his horse, Old Prince, and pictures of Grandpa Legg holding me, and my dad eventually came back from the Marines, married my mother. I'm the results. All of you are the results.
You're an only child.
I'm an only child.
Where did Legg first come to America?
That I don't know.
Not sure.
Can't go back that far. Wish I could. I'd like to have some information. I'm not even positive at this point whether the name is spelled L-E-G-G or L-E-G-G-E.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen it spelled both ways. If it's L-E-G-G-E, maybe that's Leggy and I'm part Italian. I don't know.
And what is your mom's maiden name?
My mom's maiden name was Ballard.
Oh, Ballard, right.
Yeah.
Noted that. Okay. And then you, Grandma Dot. How about you?
My mother's maiden name was Nancy Wing, W-I-N-G, and she married my father. I think she was not even 18 yet. His name was Cleon, C-L-E-O-N, Bradley Parham, P-A-R-H-A-M. I was Dorothy Parham when I married him.
Excuse me just a minute. Butch, go in there and get that old black and white picture of the farmhouse.
And
Where is it? Is it in your room?
Yeah, it's in my room, over the desk.
The office.
do you have
No,
siblings?
the bedroom.
I'm sorry.
Do you have any siblings?
I had 2 brothers. One was Junior. He was Cleon Bradley Jr., who just died about 3 months ago. He was the first child.
Okay.
I was the second, about 2 years after he was born.
Mhm.
Then I had a younger brother. He was about 4 years younger than me, and he died quite a while ago. He had,
Heart problems, wasn't
yeah,
it?
I believe it was heart problems. He was not. He was in his 60s, I think, when he died.
Hmm.
But I don't know. My memory is not too good right now, so things. You
This-
have to forgive me.
Russell, this is a picture of
Yeah, we hold it up for us and tell us about it.
that's a picture of grandma's house.
Grandma's?
That was my father's mother and daddy, and my daddy as a baby.
Your father's mother. What's her name?
Or-
Her name was Ellen Piper, and she married. Wasn't his name Robert? I just forget so easily nowadays.
Robert Parham, wasn't it?
Parham, yeah. But what was his first name, Bill? I'm sorry, but
You've done great. That's fine. I'm
mem-
pleased you can remember your childhood.
my memory is bad
As a matter of fact,
because I've had several strokes.
I am of the opinion that your memory is even better than we think it is.
Some of it is. But
You may not be able to pull words back out, but
But when you have strokes, part of it goes, and you still have the other parts. So that's why I can remember some things.
So, Dad, you were saying get them to talk about you guys? What were you asking? You're asking if I had asked them anything else yet?
No, what you just, they're as
Oh,
far
they're-
back as they're
as far
extended
back.
family, as far back as they can remember
Yeah.
the relatives. You know.
Yeah.
Their early childhood memories.
My daddy was born and raised on a farm,
Okay.
and
Yeah, stuff
my
like that.
grandmother lived there until she passed away. They never lived anywhere else but the farm. And he met my mother down the road from the farm where she was visiting. She was a Tennessee girl, but not in his part of the Tennessee. But that's where they met and got married. And then he did not want to be a farmer. He'd rather be out in the business world. So
Mm-hmm.
he went to college for a while and learned business. His brother, there was only two of them, he and his brother. Brother's name was Richard, and he loved the farm, so he stayed there and did farming until he passed away. And the farm was sold to some neighbors.
and he never had any children.
No,
This is-
my
okay.
uncle, we called him Uncle Dick.
Mm-hmm.
And no, they had no children. But I can remember going to the farm when I was a little kid. Loved it. But I didn't want to stay.
Mm-hmm.
I was a city girl. I loved to look at the animals, but I was afraid of them. I was scared to death of any animal. All except dogs. I've always loved dogs. So I would want to go back after a while. Well, my brother, I think he would have lived there had his wife wanted to, but they were city people when they got married, so he worked in Nashville all his life. So we didn't keep the farm. I wish we could have.
Yeah. And you guys have been married how long now?
All our life.
We got married in 1945,
67 years.
didn't we?
We got married in 1945.
Yeah.
55 and 12 makes 67, I think.
Been a long time, but I have to say I'm just forgetful now. He's not. He's still like he's always been. But he hasn't had any strokes like I have. He's had some bad falls. Poor guy.
In D.C. Yeah.
So who was it that came out for the 5th generation picture? That was old folks, so that was,
It was Russell.
yeah.
Yeah, it was my son, Owen.
Yeah.
Owen and Grandma.
It was Owen and Russie.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it was us right here, plus your son and old folks.
It was old folks, my mother. Or no,
Oh, it was your
I'm,
mom.
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
it was Grandma.
I've got a picture of
It was Grandma.
old folks, my mother, me, Susie, and Janice.
Yeah, it was
Who are the
nice.
old folks?
Old folks is Grandpa Ballard.
Okay.
He came
The
out
whole
first.
family called him old folks.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I think both of our families were from England, as far as I know.
Okay.
So there's actually 2 5th generation pictures. When Sue's had Janice, Grandpa Ballard
Grandpa Ballard says
came
if
out.
when Susie was born, Grandpa Ballard said, if she has a child while I'm alive, I'll get to see it even if I have to walk from Tennessee. And then when Owen, help me out here, Butch.
Well, Owen's a month older than Russie.
I don't know. They were pretty close
Yeah, I mean, they're really
to
close.
the same age.
Yeah.
They're
when we
a
came
month or
out.
two apart.
So my mother had two great-greats on her lap at the same time.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and you have those pictures, so,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, somewhere.
which was about 10 years ago now.
So is there any
No, it's 8 years ago.
is there any advice you would give to me, but to my kids?
We never listened to them, so what difference?
It's too late for my dad.
We have said so many times that our children have turned out so well, and
We're proud of our
we must
family.
have done something right. And to tell you exactly what it was,
We
I
are
don't
proud
know.
of our family.
but we loved our kids. We let them do the things they wanted to do most of the time, and they've turned out to be excellent kids, excellent men and women. And they have got excellent grandchildren that I love. So remember that.
Well, that wasn't okay. That wasn't much advice. That's okay.
What advice would you give your kids? It's the same advice.
But
Yeah.
we just enjoyed the family, you know, and tried to raise them what we thought was right. And I don't know anything else to say, really, but
Yeah.
they were good kids.
Don't feel like a sage advisor at this moment.
That's fine. Thanks for. Unless there's anything else you want to say to your
Talked about World War
Great
II, talked
grandkids.
about Stockton, talked about Tennessee.
maybe the Depression. These I don't
talked
know
about Detroit.
what it was like to live through Depression. I mean, were you hungry? Did you have the same pair of shoes
Well-
for 2 years? I mean,
I'm glad you said that about shoes, because I can remember so well wearing shoes that the shoe person, what do they call them, Bill? The
Cobbler.
cobbler put something in my shoes so I could still wear them.
As a matter of fact,
Cardboard.
we had cardboard in some
Cardboard,
of them.
yes, I think it was cardboard.
And I can recall the end being completely wore out of shoes. But the thing of it is, everybody was in the same boat.
Everybody was in the same position, and had it not been for my grandparents who owned a farm and raised vegetables and pigs and cows, we would not have had enough to eat most of the time, because we'd go down there and come back with the car loaded with food.
You save a lot of money before you
We
make
had,
that long trip.
yeah, well, it was 50 miles from Nashville to
Yeah,
where my
but that takes
grandparents lived.
gasoline and
Yes.
Yeah. And when you were a little kid, did you have a refrigerator? When you were-
ice box.
We had ice
Ice,
boxes.
so the ice guy came by and you had
The ice guy came by and you bought 25 pounds if you had enough money to buy it. And he would put it in your refrigerator or in the ice box for you, and hopefully that would keep stuff cool until it melted, and there was always a pan underneath to catch the drippings, and you had to very carefully pull that pan out in order to take it out and empty it.
cool and sanitary. You're talking about meat?
Anything
Anything that
Anything
you
you had to
you
have-
didn't
you
you
had to
didn't
put it
buy
in-
a ton of things and keep them
No,
late.
no, you couldn't. In fact, they had wagons and horses that came by
With vegetables.
every day, and you had to go out and buy your vegetables, because most of the time the supermarkets had not been built, and when they did, you couldn't go every time anyway, because they cost more than the guy with his wagon and vegetables. So yeah, that's what we did a lot.
You had a job sharpening knives. Tell them about that. That was back in Tennessee,
Oh,
right?
that was after World War II.
Oh,
The
how many jobs when you were a kid?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I had a job in a grocery store,
Doing what?
sweeping up and putting stock on the shelves, and it was nothing like the supermarket you see today. If you can go to a very small country town and go in, you might see a store that's somewhat similar to what we had back then.
I don't think they had supermarkets when we were
No,
little kids at
no.
all. You just had a,
General store.
Local grocery store, and
they had a lot of drugstores and a lot of hardware stores.
Was the butcher in the grocery store, or was the butcher shop a separate
well,
store?
butcher was in the grocery store usually. As a matter of fact, I cut meat in the grocery store that I worked in.
And you could go in and buy something in the meat department, and they'd give you things. They would save the bones for you. You take them home, make soup, because they had meat on them.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to pay for them, because they'd give them to you. And they would give the kids hot dogs. I can remember he'd come home with a hot dog sometimes.
Yeah, that was
here.
right. That was right here.
That was
was
here.
right here.
Yeah.
When I was a little kid, the store 4 blocks away, whatever, we'd go shopping and we'd walk up to the butcher counter and he'd hand us hot dogs.
Cooked?
Well, they were,
No, I don't think.
Well,
they,
hot dogs are always
they were,
cooked.
nitrites. I mean, they were safe to eat raw. You just hand them to him, just eat them right there.
Yeah,
You could eat them cold back then. I remember that.
but I don't think.
And they were
did.
not packaged. I mean,
Yeah, they weren't
break one
packed.
off.
Yeah,
Here,
it
kid.
was he'd just pull one out of the,
Jeez.
hand you a hot dog.
They do that now. They give cookies to the kids. If you go take them to the grocery store, you can go get a cookie
Yeah.
Really?
for free.
I don't think
Pretty
they
cool.
do
Back
that.
in Ohio.
Bakery.
Back in Ohio. You're
In
talking,
Ohio, they do, yeah.
you're talking about Ohio.
Mhm.
I'm sure that happens here, but
Yeah.
We will probably think of a million things that we'd like to have said.
Yeah.
well, we'll take notes. We'll-
One of the
we'll
one
write-
of the
we'll write this
things
stuff down.
one of the things that I early on we were talking about my Uncle Glenn, who had a job in Old Hickory, and the family, of course, was kind of leaning on him. He had a tendency to need to nip a little alcohol once in a while, and anyway, turns out that one of my aunts had applied for a job in a shoe factory in Nashville. My aunt, Mary Catherine.
What was her last name?
Her last name was, she was one of the Ballard
Okay.
clan.
Mhm.
And anyway, she's the one that got a call for a job, and she took off for Chicago, I think it was, and left my cousin Bob with Grandma. Where else? You always leave the kid with Grandma. Well, she was working up there, and the shoe factory contacted and wanted her. They were giving her a job. My Aunt Mildred, who was the youngest of the Ballard clan, said, well, there's a job, I can do that. And she went down, and for years and years, she was known as Mary in the shoe factory. And the job that she had was stitching tongues in shoes. And she got to the point that, boy, she could zip them suckers through there without any trouble. Well, she then became the financial backing for the family, for Grandma and Grandpa Ballard, and for me and Bobby and herself. And she kept us afloat, and that's what it boiled down to. She managed to keep us afloat.
So there were no investing, no saving.
Invest?
Okay.
Save what?
There was no,
There wasn't anything to save.
what, I'm trying to say, when you're out of work now.
Unemployment. There was nothing like that.
Nothing.
No welfare.
Welfare. There was
No.
nothing.
No welfare, no unemployment, no Social Security.
Nope. Nothing, and that's lonesome. Well, anyhow, Aunt Mildred kept us afloat, and my grandmother Ballard got a some kind of a payoff from the distribution of the farm down in Tennessee there when they finally sold it. And with that, we moved down the street and bought a little house. I mean, a small house.
Yeah.
But it was a roof, and you felt real safe if you had a roof over your head. A lot of people didn't.
What do you mean they didn't? Where'd they sleep?
Just where the homeless do tonight. Only, no, it wasn't either. They had hobo jungles and they just, you didn't have it.
In my house, we never had but 2 bedrooms when I was growing up. Well, of course, the boys couldn't sleep in the same room back then.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my brothers had to sleep in our dining room, and the other one back on the back porch, because my mother and daddy had the other bedroom. And it was like that everywhere, you know, wherever they could find a place to put a bed.
It's hard to believe the stuff that we went through back in those days. It's just almost impossible, as a matter of fact. But we survived it. You survive what you have to survive, and that's what we did.
Well, when everybody's the same, you know, and you just don't think about it any different. It's just what everybody does.
Right. Right. And so, Grandma, now you read during the day. Grandpa, how old are you?
I'll be 91 in December.
And I know you're still singing at the mall, as you mentioned. And
Still
you're also
singing.
teaching ukulele at the college.
Teaching ukulele at the college. Ran the lawnmower over the yard today to pick up the leaves. Me and Grandma walked about a mile today out on the streets, and came home rather tired, but we managed to make it. And I think we're doing quite well
I'm trying
for our age.
to keep going, because I have seen people in nursing homes, and if I can stay out of one, I want to. So far I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. We'll end on that. Thank you. Here we go. All right, so this is November. Oh, it's just a continuation of the previous video. Sheena asked Grandpa Bill to sing a song.
It's just a tap room in Pennsylvania. In Manhattan, it's a plush-lined club. It's just a gin mill in old Chicago. And in London, it's a bloomin' pub. It serves you cocktails in ritzy Newport. And it's Boilermakers in Squedon. But no matter where you are, when you stagger from a bar, you're just plain old-fashioned drunk. Walking into a grocery store, and the grocery store was nothing but a wide place in the road. But the kid came in and said, "I want 3 eggs worth of crackers."
Right.
3
Yeah.
eggs worth?
3 eggs worth of crackers. The kid had brought 3 eggs
Right. Yeah. They had
and
chickens.
wanted to trade them for crackers. And that was perfectly normal back then. You might come in with a bag full of potatoes and say, "I'd like to get some crackers," or get whatever it was that they had in that
Sugar,
sort of
whatever.
little flour sugars.
Whatever you didn't have.
I can remember when we had to go to the doctor and some people would take food. They didn't have any money and the doctor would take the food.
Wow.
That was back when we were in Depression days.
I mean, maybe while we're on, give me the price of some common things that are going to be purchased all the time, like gasoline.
Well, gasoline back in those days was anywhere from 15 cents to 25 cents a gallon.
And when you say those days,
And I'm talking back when I was a teenager.
okay.
Green beans, 3 pounds for a dime.
Loaf of bread with a nickel.
Loaf of bread could be 5 or 10 cents, depending upon whether it was a big loaf or the short loaf.
And just tell the story again about saving
wasn't
your
sliced.
lunch money to take Grandma Dot to the movie.
Yeah, I would got 10 cents a day for lunch, and I'd save 5 cents of it. And at the end of the week, I had 25 cents, and that would take 2 people to a movie and buy a bag of popcorn. And she thought I was a rich guy.
I knew she married you for your money.
Yeah, I guess that's it. She married me for
But the vast league fortune.
both pennies.